Welcome to my channel where Karens are always banned. These are HOA stories where power-tripping HOA boards take things way too far. Our next post is from a user, so I had an HOA meeting last night for my condo association. The board has been talking about adding a dog park, and we were finally ready to vote on it after much discussion over the past few months. There was just one problem: no plan and no money. The HOA had around $20,000 in reserve, and that was meant to be our sinking fund for major repairs. They wanted to spend all of that on a dog park instead. Now there are 70 units in this building, and only 14 have dogs. Of course, they all small dogs like Chihuahuas or Poodles because that's the type of person who lives here. Most folks don't want a dog park. We already have plenty of green space, and most of us don't even know these people with their precious little ankle biters anyway. It's not like we'd be walking through the park and then run into our neighbor with their freaking Chihuahua on a pink leash. But those 14 people with their precious little yappy dogs would love a dog park. And hey, at least they're getting some exercise, right? Well, the board held a vote and it passed by a very narrow margin. 5 votes for, 4 votes against, 1 abstention. That 1 abstention was mine. The whole idea of the dog park came from one of the board members. She's the one who pushed it through. Now, if she'd come to me, I would have said, hey, let's do it, but she didn't. She went straight to the meeting and forced the issue. And her dog is one of the ones that needs to go to the vet. Well, there's another board meeting tonight. I'm hoping they'll bring up the issue again and I can get them to reconsider. If not, I'll bring it up myself, and I think I've convinced enough people to veto it. Down in the comments, we had this story from another user. The exact same thing happened in my apartment complex. Only 3 votes for and 4 against, 1 abstention. The abstention was mine. The new board got elected, and the first thing they did was call a meeting. The topic of the meeting was to approve the purchase of land nearby to build the dog park. The land was purchased several years ago with reserves as a contingency plan for repairs. This dog park project was never voted on by residents. No surveys were done and there was no plan. Just buy the land and we'll figure it out. The board president actually told someone who asked why this was being done, because I've always wanted a dog park. When questioned about the purchase of the land for the dog park, the board said they couldn't remember what it cost, but the deed was in the mailroom. Turns out the land cost $60,000. The board paid full price for it. I requested a copy of the deed and a financial report about the contingency fund and the dog park. The copy of the deed had a handwritten note saying that the funds came from the reserve account. A couple of weeks later, I received the financial reports for the condo association, and sure enough, the $60,000 was missing from the reserve account. I filed a complaint with the State Department of Business and Professional Regulation. Apparently, they've been getting a lot of complaints about this board. I was told by the investigators that a new board will be appointed to investigate this further. I also found out that the board president is a broker. Every year, we receive a notice that says we cannot buy or sell our condos without paying a transfer fee to the association. I looked up the broker, and sure enough, she is the managing broker for the association. The association gets a kickback from every sale, so this broker is making double off of us. I am so glad that I complained because I found out that the books were being cooked and there's a lot more wrong with this association than just the dog park. If you look at the bylaws of your HOA, there might be something about how decisions are made. I know ours specifies that anything involving spending over $500 needs to be put to a vote by the homeowners. Anything less than that, the board can do as they see fit. Also, I'm with you on this. Dogs are great and all, but I don't want some Chihuahua running around licking my legs when I am out for my smoke break. Our next reader post is from another user. I'm currently a resident of a planned community and we have a homeowners association. All homes in this neighborhood must have a mortgage with the builder because this is a brand new community. All mortgages are with the same company, the builder, so the HOA is the biggest client. The HOA contracts with companies to provide services such as lawn maintenance, snow removal, trash pickup, etc. The homeowners pay the HOA fees and the HOA pays the contracted companies. This is common in many planned communities across the nation. So yesterday I was driving home and I noticed that the grass in our front strip was ain't cut and it looks like the lawn company hadn't been out for a week or two. This is odd because they normally cut the grass every 7 to 10 days. Our house was built 9 months ago and our front strip has fescue. Fescue grows faster than Bermuda grass, so it should have needed a mowing. I decided to drive to the office of the lawn company to see if they were closed or something like that. No such luck. Their doors were wide open and there was activity going on inside the office. I walked into the office and asked the receptionist what was going on. Why hadn't the HOA paid their bill? She said that they were working on it, but the HOA hadn't paid their bill for over 30 days. I then asked her if this was normal, if they were having problems with the HOA. She said no, it's never happened before. The HOA is usually on top of things and pays their bills on time. She went on to say that they were trying to reach the HOA by phone, but no one was answering the phones at the HOA office. She also mentioned that they'd tried to get in touch with the emergency contact for the HOA, but they couldn't get him on the phone either. I was surprised to hear that because I drive past the HOA office every day and I rarely see anyone in the parking lot. It's usually empty. I figured that the best thing to do was to try and get in contact with the HOA myself. I drove home and pulled up the covenants, conditions, and restrictions for our neighborhood. This document spells out everything that we have to abide by while living in this neighborhood. It also outlines how to contact the HOA and who to contact if you have a problem. I called the number listed for the HOA. No answer, of course. I left a message on the answering machine and waited. I called back a few hours later and left another message. About 6 hours later, I got a return call from the treasurer of the HOA. I explained my situation and he said that he'd look into it. 2 days passed and the lawn hadn't been cut yet, so I called the HOA again. This time I spoke with the president of the HOA. He told me that he'd spoken with the lawn company, but they told him that they weren't going to cut the grass until they were paid. He promised that they'd have the lawn cut within 24 hours. I was still frustrated, but I ended up hanging up. The next morning I went to work as usual. When I got home, I was expecting the lawn to have been cut. It hadn't. I called the HOA president immediately and left a message. Within a half hour, I got a call from the lawn company. They told me that the HOA had paid their bill and they were going to come out and cut the lawn tomorrow morning. They said that they'd cut the grass as soon as they could, but it was going to take a couple of days because they had to cut it so low. Sure enough, the next morning, I heard the lawnmower and they cut the grass down to a reasonable length. This entire ordeal had been frustrating and annoying, but the worst was yet to come. On Saturday, I was outside grilling and I noticed that the grass was growing again. It was obviously time for another mowing. However, when I looked out into the front strip, I saw a sign. It read, "This property is being serviced by ABC Lawn Company." It had the logo of the lawn company on it. Underneath that, it said, "Do not mow." What? Why was the lawn company putting up a sign to not mow the grass? I decided to drive over there and take a look. When I arrived, I saw that the lawn company had put the sign up on the property across the street from me. I then looked over at my neighbor's house. His grass was very long. It was obvious that his lawn hadn't been cut in quite some time. Why would the HOA pay for his lawn to be cut? I went back home and dug through the documents I had received when I bought the house. I found the deed and the plat map for our neighborhood. I noticed that we had a very large front strip and a small front strip. Our front strip had a lot of trees and shrubs, and it was almost completely covered in shade. My neighbor's front strip, on the other hand, was completely open and got sun all day. Because of the shade in our front strip, our grass didn't grow as fast as his. In fact, it was almost half the rate of growth. My neighbor had signed up for the lawn maintenance service provided by the HOA, but he hadn't paid his HOA dues for several months. He also owed thousands of dollars to the HOA, so now you're probably asking yourself, why does it matter? Why isn't he just paying his HOA fees and cutting his own grass? To understand that, you need to know a little more about this neighborhood. This is a middle to upper income neighborhood. You wouldn't find any trailer trash living here. Everyone keeps their yard immaculate and their house looking nice. There's no drive-through fast food restaurants within 5 miles of the neighborhood. There's no graffiti anywhere. It's just a really nice place to live. The reason that my neighbor doesn't just cut his own grass is that he's too good for it. He's a successful doctor and doesn't have time to mess around with cutting his own grass. He's got better things to do. He's also retired, so he doesn't have to work. He's not gonna cut his own grass just to save a couple of bucks, so the HOA pays for it. The problem is that he hasn't paid his HOA dues since last May. He claims that the HOA has mismanaged funds and they haven't fixed the streets like they were supposed to. So he's withholding payment until they fix the streets. I guess that's technically his right, but it pisses everyone else off. After doing a little digging, I found out that he's been complaining about the streets for years. The HOA has fixed the streets several times and repaved them. However, Florida weather is hard on the roads. Rain and sunshine tend to break down the tar and make the roads rough. Plus, we're close to the ocean, so the salt air tends to eat away at the tar. Florida is known for its terrible roads. Even the interstate highways have bad roads. If you drive on I-4 in Orlando during rush hour, you'll swear that you're driving on a dirt road. What's funny is that his piece of crap Honda Civic is covered in rust, but he won't let the HOA wash and wax his car because he says it's his property, and they don't have the authority to wash and wax his car. He also complains about everything the HOA does. He's constantly nitpicking them. At one point, they sent him a letter about something he had parked in the wrong place. He responded by writing a strongly worded letter to the HOA about how he is a decorated war hero and has PTSD and he can park wherever he wants. He then followed that up by saying that he's a lawyer and he's watching us. Apparently, he has nothing better to do. Anyway, I decided to confront the guy. I knocked on his door and introduced myself. I told him that I knew he was upset with the HOA, but that withholding HOA dues and letting his grass grow wasn't the way to handle it. He said that he was perfectly within his rights to withhold payment and he wouldn't pay until the HOA fixed the streets. I pointed out that they had fixed the streets and he admitted that they had, but he claimed that they hadn't done it right. I told him that he was being selfish and screwing everyone else over so that he could win a petty argument. He said that he had every right to do that and he wasn't hurting anyone. I told him that he was wrong and I walked away. He called the cops on me and accused me of trespassing. The cops came out and talked to both of us and basically told us to stay off each other's property. I was pissed, so I went home and wrote a strongly worded letter to the HOA about the situation. I told them that this guy was a war hero and had PTSD, and that he was threatening to sue them and that they needed to do something to resolve this situation. They called him and asked him to come in and meet with them to resolve the situation. He refused. That brings me to today. The HOA has taken him to court and they're suing him for delinquent HOA dues. He's fighting it, claiming that he's being oppressed. So now the HOA is taking him to court for the second time, this time to make him cut his grass. I've never seen a judge force someone to cut their grass before, but maybe it's a thing. Yeah, I've seen judges order people to cut their grass when they refuse to do so. It's usually some sort of punishment for violating some sort of HOA rule. So rest assured, he's going to court for this. And down in the comments, we have this story from another user. I had a neighbor like this in my old neighborhood. The lady across the street had a huge yard with tall grass and weeds, and she never cut it. She also had a bunch of dead trees in her yard that she refused to remove. The county had ordinances that required you to keep your grass a certain height and to trim back vegetation from power lines, but she refused to comply with them. After a while, the city had to send her a notice that she was violating code, and they gave her 30 days to fix it. She appealed it and took them to court, but she lost. The city then fined her $200 a day for every day that she was out of compliance. She had to pay the fines, and she also had to pay the city to come in and cut her grass. Then they charged her credit card on file with the permit that allowed her to appeal it. She was a huge pain in the ass, and she refused to leave until the day she died. Oh man, I love those stories. So the HOA is winning. If you like this content, check out my page where I publish extra episodes. Also hit that subscribe button because I put out new videos every single day.